So, Islamophobes have been resorting to cheap tricks to try and undermine Islam for years, so I've decided to pick out their favourites and debunk them. Number 1. Allah is a moon god. This misconception comes from two places. One is the star and crescent used as a symbol for Islam. This symbol actually comes from the Ottoman Empire. Now, the Ottomans formed in about 1299, approximately 667 years after Muhammad ﷺ had died. The second is that the Quraysh believed in an idol called Alat, which was their moon god, so apparently, because it sounds similar to Allah, it must be the same thing. Number 2. The Quran was changed. This supposed change happened in 1920 in Egypt. Now, this myth is also debunkable in two different ways. One, people who make this claim can't actually tell you what was actually changed. So how can you claim that something was changed without knowing what the change actually was? And secondly, for any of you that don't know, during Ramadan we have something called Taraweeh, where imams or reciters will stay up during the night after final prayers and recite the Quran from beginning to end over the course of 30 days. Behind the reciter usually stands a line of people who have memorised the Quran. So if the imam accidentally mispronounces something or forgets what comes next, they'll correct him. If the Quran was changed, how would the reciter have been able to do this without people correcting him? And also, how did whoever changed it convince the rest of the Muslim world to go along with this? So now we see that this myth kind of falls apart when you apply a tiny bit of logic. Number 3. Muhammad was a false prophet. Now, this takes a different form depending on the religious beliefs, or lack thereof, of the person saying it. So I'll debunk them one by one. Number 1. Muhammad was lying. Well, if he was lying, he must have had a ton of self-confidence, especially after his own family members started trying to unalive him and then tried to starve him to death via boycott, eventually causing him and his followers to flee to Medina. Even the most habitual liar would fold under this type of pressure. Number 2. It wasn't an angel in the cave outside Mecca, but it was the devil who was disguised as an angel. This is usually the answer Islamophobic Christians will give, but again, once you apply logic, it falls apart. Mainly because there would have been no need for the devil to have appeared in Mecca at all. The local populace were about as far from Christianity as you could get. They were worshipping idols made out of wood and rocks, like I say, they made them themselves. Not exactly a hotbed of monotheism. Number 3. Muhammad was crazy. When you look at the fact that Muhammad ﷺ showed zero signs of any mental instability throughout his life, it doesn't really make sense that it would randomly happen out of nowhere at 40, to the point where he believed he was receiving revelations from God. In fact, when the revelations did come, he did think he'd gone insane, which is what every sane, normal person would also think if they started receiving revelations from God. It was only through revelations and his wife who convinced him that he was actually completely fine. Also, if he was genuinely crazy, how come no one else seemed to notice that a crazy person was the head of their community, and later on the leader of their entire country? Number 4. He was doing this for money and power. Now, this is probably one of my favourite ones by far, because it shows just how ignorant they are about Muhammad's life before prophethood. In fact, judging by those two criteria, prophethood was the worst thing that could have happened to him, because it caused him to become a poor outcast. He died poor. Muhammad was part of the wealthiest tribe in the region, plus he married a wealthy widow who was also a business owner. He already had wealth and status amongst his people. Also, after he began preaching Islam, the idol worshippers of his tribe offered him money and power to stop. They even offered to make him their king if he stopped preaching Islam. He still turned them down. So, for a guy who supposedly only wanted money and power, he sure went the worst way possible about obtaining it. So, yeah, those are the 3 main ways that Islamophobes try and debunk Islam, and how to answer them. Thank you for watching. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.